to show you how to sharpen the wonderful V-chisel. I would say probably one of the most difficult chisels to sharpen, simply because of this little corner here. Let me explain to you how the V-chisel is sharpened. It's sharpened as two flat sides, and then it's got this corner. Alright, the issue comes when that corner ends up having a little bit of a point coming out, and let me explain what's happening. The V-chisel is not necessarily a sharp V. Alright, most V-chisels have a very tiny radius on the inside of the V-chisel. Now this is a great example. It's a mock-up that a friend of mine had made for me just to show how this works. You see there's a slight radius on the inside. Alright, so if you sharpen this as a flat chisel and this as a flat chisel, what happens is you actually create a sharp corner on the outside, and therefore you've got the inside radius and then you've got a sharp corner there. You've got this triangle of metal right here that actually creates a little point that really causes problems trying to get it through wood. So the answer to that problem is you take flat side, sharpen it as a flat chisel, then you take this side, sharpen it as a flat chisel, and then what you do is you take this area here and sharpen it as if it was a tiny little gouge. Alright, and then what you do, what that does is it takes that sharp corner and reduces it down to the same radius on the outside as it is on the inside, and you have a nice even corner there. Okay, so I'm going to start by, now notice the stone itself is perpendicular to the edge of the bench. This is a diamond stone, 8,000 grit diamond stone. You can use whatever stones you have. You just want to have that finest grit stone that you have. Alright, now I want to take it and I rock it back and forth. Let me just spread that water around a little bit. And until you can feel that flat. Sometimes it's easier than others. It's a little difficult right there, I think. Alright, and I'm just going to press it forward and backward. Okay, now I'm sure some of you have sharpened flat chisels before, so however you're comfortable sharpening flat chisels, use your technique. But I'm just going through my process here. Now when I was using an Arkansas stone, I only pressed on the back stroke, and then I very lightly pressed forward. I have noticed that the diamond stones allow you, because there's not really that risk of any roughness on the stone, I can press on the forward and backward stroke. The only issue comes then is making sure that you don't rock it as you go back and forth, and therefore rounding this back. So you really want to lock your wrist and go back and forth. Alright, until you get that little burr along the inside edge of that side of the chisel. Okay, then I'm going to go on the other side. Alright, you really want to make sure that you're getting this nice and flat. It's, for some reason, the V-chisel, it's the easiest one to end up having a lot of facets on the back. So you look at it and make sure that each time you lay it back, you have the same angle. And this is why a lot of times when I'm doing this, I don't like to really do a lot of movement. I don't like to re-grip the chisel or anything like that, and not really move at all, because then you can turn it over, look at it, and then just simply set it back down with the same angle and the same, basically the same feel, because if you move around too much, it's just so much more difficult to get that angle again. Okay, if you look at the back of that, you see it's actually hitting at the base there and also at the tip, and that's what I want. It's actually got a little bit of the original grind left from the machine in the center, which is fine. It's better to have a hollow than to actually have it rounded. So this is looking good. We're hitting the base here and also the tip. A lot of people like to angle or regrind their V-chisels so that it actually angles back a little bit. I tend to just keep mine just basically the factory grind straight across, right, as it comes from the factory. This actually has a slight back angle at the V. but it's always worked for me having just a straight one. In fact, I know quite a few professional carvers who, as soon as they buy a V-chisel, they grind it back so that the V sets back, sometimes as much as a 45-degree angle. Okay, so you want to make sure both of those flats you have a burr along each of the edges, and then what I want to do is I can actually look sideways at this, and I want to make sure that I've got this nice and flat across there, positioned flat across there, and very lightly just slightly rotate it. I don't need to go all the way to the flat, but I'm sharpening this as if it was a tiny curved gouge. You do that until that outside radius is the same as the inside radius, and a lot of times you can tell when it starts getting closer is that little point of metal which is created, a lot of times that's created when you create these flats. You can see that little point of metal disappearing, slowly getting smaller and smaller and smaller until you have this flat surface. It's a smooth flat surface all the way along that edge. Alright, now you want to be careful also when you're doing this sharpening here that you don't want to do this too much, because then what you have is you have a flat and then it actually goes lower and then it goes flat. And then what you have to do is take the sides down again and down to match the position of that. So this is really, you just need to be so careful not to go too far with any of this. And like I said, the V-chisel is probably the most difficult chisel, because there are 3 chisels being sharpened, 2 chisels and a little curved gouge, and they all have to kind of work together and they all have to flow together. So you just need to be very patient with it. Alright, at this point you want to, you've got a little burr along the inside edge, and you've got that outside radius on the corner matching the inside. Now I take my slipstone. This is one that I actually ground down to match the V-chisels that I have. Okay, so that V-chisel, very, very lightly just run it along the inside edge. I'm focusing on one side of the V-chisel right now, then I'm going to turn it over and focus it on the other. Alright, and that's flipping that little burr along to the other side. So then I put it back on the stone, back and forth, flat, flat, and then a little gouge, and then back to the slipstone. This process takes a lot longer sometimes than taking the burr away on the curved gouge, because there's just so many nuances with this, and you really have to go a little slower too, and a little bit more gentle in the process. Okay, so once you get that burr away, you want to look at the end, make sure there's no light reflection. A lot of times that's just a little burr stuck on the end of it still. Then just go back and forth, and just for good luck, I go back and forth a few more times. Once I don't feel a burr anymore, I just go back and forth just to make sure, and it gets it that much nicer and that much more refined. This is a piece of leather. It's got a little bit of silicone carbide powder on it, some jeweler's rouge. You can pretty much use anything. I made this. It's a thick piece of leather, and on the rough side of the leather I just put some silicone carbide powder, a little bit of oil on the back of it so it actually soaks through and causes the powder to stick. You can use anything that you can buy from any hardware store that you can use on a stropping wheel, anything like that. And I take it and drag it back on both sides as a flat chisel. Next one, flat chisel, and then drag that corner back. Okay, and I'm just doing a slight rotation on that corner. And this is a handmade strop. This is just a couple variations of curves, and then the v-chisel, and it has the same thing, the leather on top with some sharpening compound, and this way you can really press, and it goes all the way down to the V and then flat along the sides. You can really put some nice pressure on that, but again I want to be careful not to go like that. I want to drag it straight across, as flat as possible. Now to test it, you can take this and run it across the grain on any kind of wood, and this should really just sing through the wood, and no chips. It should not drag across the wood, it shouldn't split the wood, just very, very smoothly cut through the wood. Going across the grain is probably the easiest test. So as I said, this is probably the most difficult one, but just be patient in the process, and again, look back at the back side quite often just to make sure that you're keeping even on every area.